Wow, it's as if you're reading my half-written Forbes article for the next week or so. I actually call it, I think, I don't know what it's going to get called, but right now I'm calling it Voice is the New Keyboard. And I think that's a huge transformation because I don't know about you, but I think when I talk, I think in a different way than when I write. And so, for example, I found that I brainstorm with the tools, right? I mean, I can have a conversation while I'm cutting, salad for a dinner, right? And I'm having a conversation with my chat and I'm telling them what I'm thinking about, whatever conversation I had or a column I'd like to write. And by the time I'm done, it's able to formulate a Rev Zero that makes more sense definitely than I talked through, right? So I think that voice is a huge transformation for us. It also covers languages, accents, everything else that's interrupting our ability to collaborate properly in different formats. I think we will be able to use. So when prompt engineering showed up, I said that wasn't a thing and it wasn't going to last. And the reason I said that is because it's very clear, and it's been clear for a few years, that where we're going is a place where we want to remove the barriers between the physical and the digital worlds. And today those barriers show up through screens and through keyboards and mouse. And when you start talking to the world and it can talk back, it's a different relationship with technology. It will just be there and it will just do what, you expect it to do. And it might actually become invisible, as in it's not devices anymore, right? So I think that's a huge transformation.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. There's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
A lot of people say that they're future of work experts. Today, we have one who's not just an expert, she's actually the leading indicator of it. And I'm so excited to bring Nirit Cohen to you. You may know her because she's a Forbes columnist. You may also know her because she has a tremendous podcast that I've been having so much fun listening to called The Future of Less Work. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and a YouTube channel. And I read her LinkedIn posts. So definitely we're going to talk a little bit more. But just as a quick background, very important, right? This is somebody who's been inside for technology for 3 decades at Intel and also in multinational environments. So this isn't somebody that's just wearing a moniker. Hey, I'm a future of work expert. This is the real deal. And I'm so thrilled to have you here, Nirit. Just say hi.
Wow, Lauren, I'm speechless. I mean, wow, what an introduction. I think it's time to step down.
All right. Well, I know that this is so well earned and deserved. And so I really want to talk today about a couple of different pockets, not to overwhelm anybody, but about the future of work. And of course, we're going to touch on AI. But I mean, I've been curious. I've been so curious. What is the future of less work? Because that seems to be so counterintuitive to everybody who is grinding. And, they say we're returning back to the office so that we could have some more, boundaries with our time. But people are still working longer weekends, late night meetings. So what is less work?
So, yeah, that's a really good question, obviously. So I've been researching and writing about the future of work for over a decade, right? Since I started, in fact, I have a regular column in a paper of some sort since 2014. weekly, right? So the only reason I mention this is because the future arrives, right? And you can look back and see what happens. And so once every few years, I have a process, and I actually take some time and I look at, well, once every few years, but it's speeding up, obviously. I look out, if I can, all the way a decade out, and ask myself what's going on, and try to wrap something around that. And so when I first did that in 2011, we were actually looking at 2020, then at 2025, and describing a world where everywhere was going to be a new location, everything was going to be the new work, and everyone was going to be the new talent. And I was describing in some sort of fractionalized unbundling, right, of work in a lot of layers of it. And I remember being the keynote that they'd bring into leadership strategy meetings, the person who's talking about stuff that's never going to happen, or just kind of to open, to blow your mind. And then COVID hit. And suddenly a lot of the things that we were seeing creeping in, right, they burst wide open, and it became every day. So a couple of years ago, I actually started looking again beyond, right? We're still talking about hybrid and RTO, and that's not the future anymore. And I looked, again, a few years into the future, and you see this convergence of not just technology that is potentially taking away large chunks of our work. So there's this dystopian, future of less work concept, but also people that went through COVID, was a disease, reminded us life's short, and every day we go to work is a day of our life that we exchange better be worth it. And they are loud and clear, have been saying, in fact, pre-COVID, and I've written about this multiple times, right, that they want a different deal in the overall space of work and life, that they no longer want life to begin where work ends. And when you look at the convergence of technology allowing us to do things differently, and people wanting something else than what was, and we can talk about the details, but there are a lot of signs about this. I looked at this and I said, well, it is the future of less work, but there's a question marker on what kind of less, right? It could be less of the things that we no longer maybe want to do and more of what matters. There's also the less that, is happening today, which is less of the jobs that maybe companies are hoping to replace with AI. I have my own version on why I think that's not a feasible scenario. But that's, and frankly, I panicked, right? Because I said, okay, I cannot go out with a future of less work title because nobody will hire me. Nobody wants to hear about this. But I've learned that when you don't like something, it's usually because it's true.
Well, also it's provocative.
Yeah.
Right? It arouses a lot of questions. And I think that is always a good thing, because then that curiosity kind of drives a lot of interpretations, as you've already laid out. It could mean X, Y, or Z. And I think that there's a lot of value in it. I am just going to raise my hand too and say, I want less of the things I hate to do in my business. You wanted AI? All yours. I just have this thing about grind of the administrative things. Thank you, AI, because I'm not no expert. I actually don't think anybody really is at this point. But my point is, even the little that I'm integrating day by day by day is saving me a lot of time and freedom to spend more time doing the things in my business I love to do, like podcasting. So
that's an excellent comment. And I think part of why I think the future of less work is an interesting conversation is that if you were now a salaried employee, what would happen in the ownership model? Because a salaried employee, the employer supposedly owns their time, right? So if you just freed up 2 hours of your day because you became better at using tools to free up, an employer would say, well, I'm just give you 2 hours more of work. And part of what we're seeing it, right, as employees are negotiating this, they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to take 2 hours more of work. I actually want to negotiate this. I'll give you an hour more of work, and I'm going to take an hour to myself to do the things I never got around to doing.
Right. I like this barter system because I think it presents a win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
It's it's not that the quality is also compromised. right? Of course, you need eyes on it and all that kind of stuff. It isn't like, oh, let me just hack it away. there's obviously standards, but at the same time, there's also, greater intrinsic fulfillment.
Yeah.
You're in your zone, right? You're
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you can't hack it away, because if you do, then you're not in your zone. Then what you deliver isn't up to par, right? Then you will be the future of less work, where someone will say, well, you're not adding value beyond what AI can do, because all you're doing is copy paste, and therefore I don't need you anymore.
Right. So you actually set me up for this next question. So thank you so much. You said, I have a lot of opinions on where these human factors come in. And so here it is, right? You're at this kind of central divide. AI can do operation. AI can do and help you with marketing strategies. AI can do, all kinds of things with logistics. So what is left for us humans to actually do? And why is that work anything when the marketplace is fixated on efficiency? There's a lot of tension between those two things. But give me the Nirit Cohen 411.
So the reason we're all on this path, technology came in and it put in machines. And so things we did with our hands, we no longer need to do, right? So we moved to do things with our minds, and we created a knowledge economy, right? We're thinking and therefore we're doing, right? Now machines are thinking. And so we're sitting here thinking, okay, they don't need our hands anymore because machines can do that. They don't need our minds anymore because machines are thinking. What's left for me to do? That's the dystopian future, right? Of the future of less work and a linear thinking of how things are evolving. And that's also, I think, the part that companies like these days, because what they're doing is an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to bring in 10 AI agents, replace 10, people. I saved a bunch of money and be more productive. And let's play this out for a second. If technology is vanilla and it's doing your podcast and my podcast and your content and my content, and it's, creating something that everybody has, then at some point we're all going to be wearing white t-shirts, right? It's going to be boring because your AI will talk to my AI. Your AI will write a LinkedIn post. My AI will write the comments. It will be boring. At some point, somebody will look at this and say, oh, I have something to say. And they'll wear a pink t-shirt. And we'll all look at this and say, wow, I want one of those too. And we'll remember that there's a portion of our work that is inherently unique to who does it, that we do not understand these days because we didn't have to, because most of our work, in fact, was the stuff that AI can do. We do a lot of logistics and coordination and process stuff, and we have this uniqueness to us that makes you, right? But we lose it. We also don't even have the words to name it. You say, I'm a podcaster. So am I, but we're not the same. So podcaster doesn't describe the nuances of what makes you different than me, right? Than anyone else. And that's also true for words like innovation, or, somebody in marketing was describing an innovative person in marketing. And I said, well, okay, but innovative in marketing is different than innovative in medicine or innovative in finance. It's the same word. It doesn't mean the same thing, right? So we've never needed to get to the nuances of human uniqueness that are an important piece of what makes you, and you can be an individual, but you can also be a company. You different from your competitors, from your suppliers, from anybody out there. And if we all just shift all the way to having AI do everything, we will lose that because we don't even know it's there. And so I actually think we're seeing a little bit of a pendulum, movement right now. They're kind of trying to talk about productivity, talk about replacing jobs with technology. At some point, some people will realize, and then some people will just discover that they've lost what made them, and then start bringing that back.
I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, Not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then. So, in the spirit of good food, like we are the sprinkles and the blueberries and the chopped nuts and all the things that go on top of the vanilla. And, this is an area that we both, straddling and covering. And the $1 million question is, okay, great. So what does that mean for me when I'm in the marketplace and I'm at risk because a lot of the core functions that I have been doing are now abated and dedicated to this machine? How do I really own my blueberries, like all these things, and then be able to make sure that that is at the value threshold that a company is going to pay for it? Because everybody all this time has been, you need to differentiate, you need to brand yourself, you need to be authentic, you need to do all these things. And so this whole idea of cutting through the noise or the commodity of just your title or any of those kinds of things, that has been happening. I wouldn't say like a seismic shift overnight, but it's been happening through, the course of the past 10, 15 years, right? Like it's not just enough to say, oh, guess what? I'm a CMO. There's your vanilla.
Yeah.
So how does this work in the real world in terms of either the execution, the storytelling? What can we do differently to really be owning those topics?
So I think, first of all, it does depend on whether you're asking from the perspective of somebody who's got, 10, 15, maybe even more experience years behind them, or if you're talking about just now entering the market or maybe just a few years, generation. And just to prove the conversation that we just had on the essence of human value, you notice the first thing that the markets actually shut down on was entry-level jobs, because people coming into entry-level jobs, they know the mechanics of what they learned in college about finance or about business or about, whatever it is they've learned, but they don't know the nuances of running a meeting, influencing people, working in teams. They haven't learned the human aspects. So companies are saying, well, the technical baseline of the profession I don't need anymore. So they're putting out job postings starting 2 years of experience. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, how are you going to get the first 2 years? And we'll figure it out. We will. But I think I'd separate that. So if I'm actually entry level right now, or even in the first few years, I'd say, first of all, lead with AI. This thing is scary to the generation of my age group or experience level. We've built our experience and we're expecting to cruise to retirement comfortably now based on all the years that we've accumulated. And this thing is, pulling the rug from under our feet as well. So really lead, not just in a way that makes you really good at what you do, but also that as a manager, if I hire you, I know that you're going to take the entire team up with you, enable them, bring in new stuff as it comes in. So people will still hire the engines of transformation. And a lot of young people can be the engine of transformation if they set out to do that, right? So that's one strategy. The other one is make sure that you really get a good understanding of the human aspects of what make you you. And I mean that in the sense that we're all very different, but we do have the lenses through which we walk through life, right? So even if you are a CMO or, a finance analyst, some of us are really good at connecting or collecting the dots and putting them into a picture, right? So that whatever it is that you're doing, I always say this, look for when your friends come to ask your advice, or your coworkers are coming to you, not because it's your job, but because they know that you will be able to repackage whatever concern or question that they're bringing into you with a different lens, right? These are really good signals that what is it, the value that you bring that doesn't have anything to do with your job or your profession. So you have to pay attention to these.
I really love that. And I call this your unfair advantage. It's something that you do. You're probably not even aware of it at times, but it's just like one of those inherent things that are like the you of you, right? Like, oh, that's such a, like sometimes like my friends, oh, that's such a Laurenism. And I'm like, oh, there it is, right? Like, I think that those are some really good triggers and hallmarks of the things that you want to explore and maybe even in a positive way exploit, because those are the things that other people can't copy. And that's why I refer to it as the unfair advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
This may be overlapping, but I also wanted to, since we're on this, I just can't let it go, because a lot of what's been talked about very, very recently, and you said, now we can have a keyboard, but isn't voice going to be replacing the keyboard?
Wow, it's as if you're reading my half-written Forbes article for the next week or so. I actually call it, I think, I don't know what it's going to get called, but right now I'm calling it "Voice is the New Keyboard," and I think that's a huge transformation, because I don't know about you, but I think when I talk, I think in a different way than when I write. And so, for example, I found that I brainstorm with the tools, right? I mean, I can have a conversation while I'm cutting, salad for a dinner, right? And I'm having a conversation with my chat, and I'm telling them what I'm thinking about, whatever conversation I had, or a column I'd like to write. And by the time I'm done, it's able to formulate a rev zero that makes more sense definitely than I talked through, right? So I think that voice is a huge transformation for us. It also covers languages, accents, everything else that's interrupting our ability to collaborate properly in different formats. I think we will be able to use. So when prompt engineering showed up, I said that wasn't a thing, and it wasn't going to last. And the reason I said that is because it's very clear, and it's been clear for a few years, that where we're going is a place where we want to remove the barriers between the physical and the digital worlds. And today those barriers show up through screens and through keyboards and mouse. And when you start talking to the world and it can talk back, it's a different relationship with technology. It will just be there, and it will just do what you expect it to do, and it might actually become invisible, as in it's not devices anymore, right? So I think that's a huge transformation.
Oh, now I can't wait to read the article. Yeah, this is huge. I know countless people that use AI on their dog walks, and it's a way for them to vent. I know people that are talking to it as a therapist. I know people who are using it in so many ways. And so, like orange is the new black, and maybe, voice is the new keyboard. So I'm right with you there.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. I think about this maybe in a similar way than you do. Like, the corporate ladder is looking more and more like an escalator that seems to be going off into the abyss, into the nowhere. And so what is the new climb? It used to be, oh, I can't wait to get to the C-suite because then I've arrived, right? And I'm not saying that's disappearing, and I'm not saying that, none of that is true anymore. But with all of these different pieces that we've been talking about, having more ownership, the future of less work, all of these things that AI can do, your uniqueness, what kind of crescendo does that lead us to in terms of where the evolution is of this thing called the ladder?
So I don't think we have a ladder anymore. In fact, I think that the only place where a ladder still exists are some of the HR processes and organizations, which is why we're having talent issues. I actually describe the career progression these days, and for a while, in fact, I'd say for a decade. And we see that in data, right? Even in LinkedIn data, like a rock climbing wall. Those places you go to mimic rock climbing, and there's still general direction up, But you can start in the same place and end up on different places in the wall, as opposed to a ladder. It takes you from point A to point B. So my generation set out with this deal. We were told, go study a good profession, then go look for a good job, right? A good employer. And then you walked in the door and you looked up and you saw your boss and their boss and their boss, and that was your career. And one day they'll call you into, a conference room with training, and that's called professional development. And another day they give you a promotion, and you wake up in somewhere in the middle of your life and you discover you're either a manager or a individual contributor, and you do almost coast to retirement, right? And that was kind of one big cycle that lasted from your 20s to your 60s. That's no longer the deal. I'm really good at a lot of things nobody needs anymore, right? So knowledge ages. So you cannot build on whatever you learned in your 20s into your 40s or 50s. In fact,
I love that. Knowledge ages.
It's not even possible. We know the half-life of knowledge, which is how fast half of what you know is no longer interesting. It's about 5 years now. So think how many times you need to learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? That means that there are a lot of things that you know how to do that people call different names when they're referring to it, as opposed to the profession you studied way back in your 20s. When you're climbing a ladder, if you decide in your 40s that you don't like where you are, it was big issue, because what am I going to do now? Lose 20 years of experience and start from scratch, right? But if you're on a rock climbing wall, all that means is that your next step, it might not be, the general direction up that you were on, but it could be sideways. It could be changing direction. So basically on a rock climbing wall, with every junction, which could be a job change, a project, or just, your manager change and you're not very happy with them. You ask yourself, where do I want to put my foot next? And you can answer by changing direction to some place that resonates better with who you are now, what you want to do, what's possible. So we can start in one place, end on different places. We could also start in different places and end in the same place. We see that too, right? A lot of jobs and professions that people migrate into from what used to be various professions or starting points. That's how I see careers, and they're faster, right? The cycle of growth, peak, and then decline. It used to be about 30 something years, and today it's about, 6 or 7. So the decline of the career you're on is not a matter of if, just of a when. And in fact, I actually did write a book about this, but it's not in English. And I end it saying that every one of us will have, but I believe is very close to having 4 careers in parallel. The remnants of your old career that you're milking, that you might still be doing pieces of that. Maybe they're, for fun or for income. Your current career, which is most of your time and pay, because that will end. You're looking at what it is that you might want to do next and evolve, right? So that's kind of your next career. And on the side, we have something that's either a hobby or a volunteer that in a pay world, we don't consider a career, but in a world where work is about building capabilities and skills, those build capabilities and skills. And so they become your 4th career, and sometimes they end up being your next career.
I could block my calendar for the rest of the day and just really listen to all of these wonderful things that you have to say. So I want to also ask you this kind of last question, and it's not designed to be loaded. I'm not talking about power in the ego sense. What I'm, really emphasizing here is ownership and control. And the question is, in this AI-enabled world, who is the most likely or easiest audience to gain it? And who is also maybe at risk of losing it first? The power in our world of work.
Maybe looking at trends makes me optimistic. So I actually think that for the first time in a really long time, technology is not in the hands of corporate. So if you think about the history when it was big machines in the production era, or, even computers and servers and the knowledge era, right? Corporate supplied you with a technology Therefore, you needed them to use it, which is why a lot of people became salaried employees and sometimes spent years not necessarily loving what they do, but working because that's the way you did it. Technology today is a $20, $40, $60, $80 deal. And in fact, up until now, probably will change, but I'm not sure how fast. Most of AI in organizations is a bring your own bottom up thing. And I know a lot of organizations now from the top trying to figure out what to do with it, but enterprise AI is yet to be had. It hasn't happened yet. And it's really, really, really hard. So I would say, now couple that with the fact that I talked about the demographic changes and how we think about work. So think about all the people that could not have a promising career because you needed to have education that was only formal and very expensive, or you needed to live in places where there were jobs, or you needed to have a setup at home that allowed you to spend, 9 to 5 away from home, right? And today you can have flexible kinds of arrangements. You can have remote options. You can have all sorts of ways to connect, to learn, to connect yourself to work, to create this, like I said, for career, structure for yourself that some of it's growing, but some of it's paying, right? If you think about that and couple it with technology being a $20 deal, then I think for the first time in a long time, actually the power goes to people. And I think we're seeing that because when organizations are calling people back to the office, back to is not a future direction, but they're still trying that. We're seeing people not complying. Mm-hmm. And that in itself shows you that they have options. They could do something else. If I'm, making fries at McDonald's and you yell at me as my manager, I will walk to the other side of the road. I know the pay. I know the work. I'm not asking for more. I'm just not going to be treated that way. And because the other side actually needs an employee because they don't have enough, they will hire me. Mm-hmm. So it's my optimistic perspective.
First of all, what I get so excited about is that in so many ways, technology has helped us democratize not only who has access and who has influence, but also some of the, I'll just say it in this way, some of the milking of a lot of the pedigree came without a lot of the impact has also been deflated.
Yes.
And so when we hear this, especially in the executive search, I have my MBA from Harvard. It's like, I'm not saying that doesn't have value, but it has more value. It had more value then when it was just an assumption of what that would impact and how that would change the business. Now you got to stand for it. Now you really gotta have those proof points and really be able to make sure that expectation is mirrored in everything that you are bringing forward, and not just because of your experience, because of where you're going next.
Yeah.
I appreciate this so much. And I do hope, dear listeners, that this gives you not only unbelievable insight to the future of work, but a lot of hope. Because we hear so much about, the marketplace and, all the things that are maybe not necessarily, something to celebrate in the world of work, but not in this episode. And Nirit, I am so unbelievably enthralled by your work. I have loved even meeting you just even this one time. And I so look forward to other opportunities. Listeners, please, if you like this episode, do us a solid, it's kind of like a virtual hug. Write us an Apple Podcast review, subscribe to this show. We are ranking. And that's kind of a big deal. I'm so excited because podcasting isn't my full-time day job, but this is something that I love to do. And thankfully, AI has helped me to do this and free up some of my time so I can and bring on amazing guests like Nirit. Also below, don't forget, you can follow Nirit on LinkedIn. Her link will be there, her podcast link, her YouTube link, and links to her book. Nirit, thank you so much. So grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for inviting me. This was awesome.
See you guys next week. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.